this. So there we are. Okay, then Peter, I give over to you. It's your forum now.
Okay, hello folks.
Hey.
This is an informal presentation because I don't believe in formal ones. We're talking about, as I understand it, the journey from sound remedies to smart medicine. So I'm going to talk from that perspective. So as most of you know, homeopathic remedies can be made into pills and liquids, surprisingly, by some weird method that no one understands, but everyone believes they do. I'm joking slightly, but anyway, so when I was making new types of remedies, there was straightforward. I downloaded them into liquids to start with, and that was fine. But then it occurred to me I could use exactly the same method to download them into sounds. So I come from electronics background, not a chemical background, so I much prefer sound. And anyway, so we started a website called Healing Downloads, I think, back in the 2007 or 8 or something like this. And we had a whole bunch of, and that was only the beginning steps of this, but we had a whole bunch of remedies on it, including one for, say, herpes. And herpes, you know, in theory, if you go to a homeopath and you've got herpes, they'll give you either a remedy for herpes or a remedy for your constitution, and hope one of those two works. Well, herpes is an epidemic disease. It's contagious, so it responds to genus epidemicus. So as far as I'm concerned, one sound should treat herpes, and it did. And we got lots of good feedback from around the world, and we put up a lot of other remedies in that time too. So that's when I started using sound remedies back in the middle 2000s. And they're just, in my conclusion after 20 years or so, they're just as effective as pills or liquids. And there's no difference, except the sounds have one very distinct advantage. You can send them all over the world instantly and deliver them. And that is, and when in the early days, you know, I was working with Harry van der Zee, and we have a foundation in Holland called the Amma Resonance Healing Foundation. And we sussed out that the problem of the world in some level was epidemic diseases, surprisingly. We thought the greatest threat to the world was epidemic diseases. And we had a solution, because if we can send out a sound to deal with an epidemic disease, that has possible implications. And we knew about the flu, or Great Flu of 1918, for example. And we knew that the results from Bradford's logic of figures were gelsemium was #1, 80% of the time. And homeopathic remedies work really well on epidemic diseases. So, and at the time when I was experimenting with sound remedies, there was SARS, and there were various swine flus and various things going on, which indicated the world was hyper alert to epidemic diseases, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, being created in a way to try and squash any epidemic getting going. Well, they failed on this one, but so we saw the potential then for treating epidemic diseases through sound en masse. So you could deliver this through the internet, and you can, you know. So I'd like now to play you a brief video from Kenya, which came in a few weeks ago. And it's from a headmaster of a school. And when I was in Kenya about 2014, well, I'll just explain. I was sitting in a clinic, and they were just treating routinely people for all the things they come into the clinic for. But in Africa, it's half the cases are some epidemic disease or other. And the other half are often the consequences of some epidemic disease, a chronic consequence of the epidemic disease. So I was treating these kids for all sorts of things. And and I should say that at some point the way we make remedies, we make them for diseases, epidemic diseases. But I figured that trauma, like post-traumatic stress disorder, is also an epidemic disease. It's not characterized to the person, it's characterized to the disease picture. So we already experimented in those days with remedies for things like post-traumatic stress. So I'm sitting in a clinic in 2014 in Kenya, and treating the kids for a week or so, and I'm seeing every kid that comes to me, and I'm thinking, how can this kid go to school and learn? He's sick as a dog, and yet he's going to school, but he's suffering from malaria or some other epidemic disease or something else, or some trauma. You know, for example, we had a kid who came in, admittedly not at school age, but his mother had 4 children. 2 were functioning fine, and the youngest one was functioning fine, but the next to last was like 2.5 years old and a rag doll. And I mean, a floppy rag doll, no tone to the bottle at all, nothing. But since I knew this couldn't be genetic because the 3 other children doing fine before and after, I said to her, well, what happened in the pregnancy then? Oh, she said, and she changed tone immediately. And she said, well, my brother-in-law was murdered. And I was the first on the scene, you know. So I said, okay. So I treated her for the trauma, and the child was up. And this was a child that didn't eat, didn't walk, didn't nappy change, had no strength, no muscle tone, nothing. This child was up and running in 2 weeks. So, anyway, so I'll move on quickly. So then after a week or so, I was thinking of this on that. So I went, and so I decided to make a remedy for one single sound for all the common epidemic diseases of Africa. It was a combination remedy. It just had, 10 seconds for each one, so to speak. And then I decided to make another one for all the common traumas of Africa. And the most common traumas of Africa are war and genocide and rape. The women, I think the figures in Africa is that 50% of women get raped, to some degree or other. So it's pretty horrendous, and there's other things that go, and accidents and such like, the guy comes in with he's got lumbago, and you say, what happened before you had the lumbago? Oh, I fell off a tree, fell out of a tree. You say, okay, we'll treat you for injury, and then they get better. It's really straightforward stuff. And so I had a second sound that treated them for the traumas, and the third sound, which was my experimental stuff, which was to enhance their concentration and focus. So I thought, well, we're doing 2, we might as well do all 3 of them and see what happens. And I spoke to the headmistress of the nearby school, and whereas in Europe, you can imagine the resistance to experimenting in the whole school, she said, yes. And so I gave her a loudspeaker with three MP3 sticks. You know what an MP3 stick is? Yeah, okay. So, the thing you plug into the side of your computer. Anyway, and and I called it LEAP, Learning Enhancement Africa Program, just for the sake of a name. And she tried it out, and she played it every morning to every classroom. She just walked around, and there was a portable speaker with battery in it and such like. And in Africa, you have to have something which is incredibly flexible because there's no electricity in the average classroom. So she passed it, and it took 3 minutes. And within a week, she came back to me. Her eyes are light. She said, "This is working." So, and you could never do that in the West and get that sort of feedback so quickly. So anyway, this guy. So then, say 6 years on from that, we've spread this across hundreds of schools in Kenya. And in Kenya, they have a system of marking exams. They have a nationwide exam for the primary schools. So the standard in the school from how the children do in the national curriculum, so the exam. So this, if you could play the video now, it's only 3 minutes and you'll get the idea.
Because of this remedy, and at the same time we have been receiving so many pupils from neighboring schools because they know that at Marega Primary School, we have the remedy. We started with the population of 430, but at the moment I'm talking, we are 630. And that one is because of this malaria prevention. In terms of result, we've been having good result from 2015 to 2020. 2015, we had a mean score of 255. 2017, we have a mean score of 268. 2019, we had a mean score of 278. This is because of this remedy, because we are having 100% turnout from Monday to Friday. And at the same time, we have extended the malaria prevention to our neighboring communities. We are now going up to the community and help those people who cannot go to the hospital. This medicine has been helping them. And every Friday, they're coming to our school, Marega Primary School, to book, and we give them this prevention. And then the clip has also been helping us, especially every afternoon under our tree at Marega Primary School. We normally ring the bell, call the children, and then we play for them the leap. That one makes them totally change their behavior and their characters. This one helped them so much, and in fact bring them together. At times they are coming to class in my office. Mr. Tembu, can you go and play for us leap? And the leap 3 has been helping us, especially when we are approaching the exam. Good memory has been experienced, and this leap has helped us to do much better. Like right now I'm talking, our school is #1 within Umbei zone because of playing the 3 leap. Otherwise, I'm praying that this program should continue, and also God
can you
help
finish
our
now?
directors in Kenya and those in the Netherlands to continue having this program.
Okay, thank you. So I know that terrible background noises and such like, it's shot on an iPhone at a distance and God knows what. But basically he said 2 things there. One was it changed their character. Now, obviously it didn't change their character, but what we noticed is that the violence went out of the children and the teachers. And so that they could learn, they didn't have a violent traumas running inside them, inherited traumas, so that they could function better. So they were not performing, they weren't performing as before as wounded people, wounded children from early trauma. They were performing as adults. They were being more present moment. And he said, well, okay, so that was the main point we noticed. For example, they stopped using the cane spontaneously across all schools where we introduced it without us ever asking them to stop the cane. And in a study we did of 40 schools, which might include, something like 20,000 children, their exam results went up something like 26%. And they had some very bright students coming forward, which they'd never seen before, and other things. And one school, which was the worst performing school virtually in the country, was second best in the country, etc. So what we saw was, so I'm just showing you what sound can do and the obvious applications. So I'm now moving on. So out of Africa completely. I just wanted to give you the foundations of where I come from. So we applied, so we started applying the remedies for, well, no, we did some studies. I did an extensive period of study of a year or 2, where I looked at what the causes of diseases are. We ran a clinic, we treated all comers, and we researched what is the causes of the diseases that these people are complaining of. And we came up with an acronym after a while, which we called TIPS, which is TIPPS. And the T is for toxins. And obviously toxins are an underlying cause of disease, like air pollution, not to mention, why do we have unleaded petrol? Something to do with the lead in the brain, And they never tell us why. They never compensated the world for taking lead out of petrol, but they took it out all the same. And so they do notice these things. Then tips, the second one is infections, where homeopaths don't have a discussion about that. It's miasms. And there's as many miasms as there are infectious diseases. And in Africa, obviously, the number one miasm is malaria. The number two is gonorrhea on a physical level, and on a mental level, the number one is war trauma, and the number two is rape. So so that's the infectious diseases. But you see these things, but literally in the West, there's as many, just the fundamental is there is many miasms there are of epidemic diseases. They're the same thing. And then the psychological trauma, which tips that so the psychological trauma, obviously, is if a girl gets incest, for example, is classic. You know, incest usually rolls back several generations. So if someone's coming to you for incest effects, you know, you only have to ask what happened to your mum, and you find out it's back one generation. If you go, and what happened to your grandmother, back two generations, and it goes back into history. So incest runs in families, and so does everything else. So the psychological trauma can be very deep and very genetic, going back many generations. And it's the same with physical trauma. As I mentioned earlier, injury, but injury often runs in families, for example, as do operations. And you get families where head injury is their speciality. You might have come across them, if they're horsey type people, they often have head injuries going back generations. So those are the four common causes of epidemic diseases, and of chronic disease. And from what I've seen, there aren't any others except one, which is I call it spiritual, the S of tips, but it's more like consciousness. It's the lack of recognition, lack of connection to their consciousness, rather than their over-connected to the animal, the human being. So the way I see it, we are two things. We are a divine being. I call it a divine being, which is the permanent part of ourselves, which is what I'm speaking from right now, and it operates through all of us all the time, though we don't recognize it. And then there's the human being, which is all the crud from history, if you like, all the leftover bits from history, and all our adopted habits and incredible bad habits in a way, which incarcerate us in this physical temporary body. So the consciousness bit is helping people be more, in very many people, the problem, forget all the physical phenomena, the main key thing is they're not well connected to their conscious or divine being. And if you sort that out, it's like you're moving from a headless chicken to a chicken that can run about properly. So that was sort of where we got to on that level. So if you then fast forward, if you fast forward to chronic diseases in the West. Chronic diseases in the West, things like diabetes and blood pressure, they're the same in Africa, but diabetes, high blood pressure, etc. These are the outcome of what we call TIPS, which are all epidemic phenomena. Toxins are epidemic phenomena. Infections are, psychologically and physical trauma, they're all epidemic phenomena. They don't really relate to the person. They relate to the history and what they call the epigenetics, and it's all well mapped. And I don't know if you've come across. You must have come across. Well, no, I don't know. No, I won't go there. That's just a sidetrack. So when it comes to something like diabetes, which is not much to do with the person, and they call it a lifestyle disease, but actually the lifestyle is the outcome of what we call TIPS. If you've got these TIPS phenomena in your history, it will lead to poor diet, lack of exercise, lack of connection to your soul, lack of, so as far as I'm concerned, diabetes is classic outcome of a whole set of epidemic phenomena, which is essentially genus epidemicus applies to it all. So then I didn't understand this to begin with, but I just took risks and tried things out, especially in Africa. For example, in Africa, I made a remedy for epilepsy. Epilepsy is so common in Africa. And the kids, they fall over into the fire. You know, they have a grand mal when no one's looking, they're in the fire, and they got terrible burns, you know, so you get a double whammy, and it's routine. So I made a remedy for epilepsy, and to my amazement, it's the grand mal every day changed to a petit mal once a week. Can you imagine the difference that makes when you have a 20-year-old child and you're having a carer? She's got to have 100% care all the time, otherwise. And in Africa, they don't have the people to do that and the resources. Anyway, I was experimental. So I tried, and we made a remedy for diabetes. And by God, it works. It's like, and the result is, you know, the blood sugar comes down, it normalizes, and it stays there. And you can, and the same applies to blood pressure and other things. Now, we haven't got consistent information yet on that, and even if we had, I'm not sure what we could do with it because no one would want to believe us. And now, if you look at it, the technology, let me just keep an eye on time. The technology has moved ahead. So right now, you can put something on the person's body, wrist, on their wrist, and you can measure their blood sugar constantly. You can broadcast that to an app on their phone. You can put an algorithm in the phone which intelligently analyzes what's going on. The only thing you can't do in conventional medicine is adjust the remedy, because you haven't got electronics. Well, we've got the electronic, or we've got the remedy electronically. So we can then adjust that remedy electronically to suit where the person's got to. So you can put a complete package on their phone, put a monitor on their wrist, and you've got, and the whole thing will automatically, because it's got intelligence built into it based on clinical experience, adjust the diabetes dose and keep them stable. That's the future of medicine, in my opinion. And it won't be necessarily, because the conventional medicine will fight tooth and nail not to let something as radical as this get into position, but it could be. And so I think in the future, you know, well, and if you think about the nice side of this, you know, you start off with someone who comes to diabetes, you don't have much clue as to what to do. You give them the diabetes app and you wait until they've improved and stabilized, and then they probably need something else that's deeper and more perceptive about them. And then you can move in with a homeopathic remedy, and you've not got to deal with insulin, you've not got to deal with any drugs for blood pressure. You've got a clean patient, and you can treat them and deal with the deeper, you can see what's necessary and deal with the deeper issues or the other issues which are not covered. And so it would mean that as a homeopath, in my observation, or as anybody else, you could treat all comers. You could treat people and you don't care what the disease is, you've got an app for it. And it actually doesn't matter if you're a homeopath or an acupuncturist or anybody else, providing you understand holistic principles of treatment and cure, and the law of cure especially, you know what's going on. You can support these people, you can see what the issues are, and you can, but the day-to-day, you know, the day-to-day stuff, instead of having phone calls, you know, telling you information and then you've got to adjust it and think about it, the app does it for you. Oh, that is so much nicer. Anyway, that's my opinion. So that's approximately what I was planning to say. I've had to make huge leaps forwards. There were 10 stages of the development of our new technology remedies. And from the very first one right through to the present stage, and we're still actually improving on our technology, if you like, and the way we make, what we make, and how we understand disease. So we're still going we're still burrowing into it deeper than we were before. And it's very complementary to homeopathy, and it's not, in my view, it is homeopathy, but I don't say it's homeopathy. We call it source resonances, just because homeopaths, it's probably too much to sort of join those things together comfortably. But the tools of homeopathy are absolutely there. It's straight genus epidemicus, organon 101 to 104. And as far as I'm concerned, it's straightforward homeopathy, but you might think differently. So as not to offend the purists, I don't say those things too often. I don't insist in calling it. We call it something else, and then you can choose to use it or not. So, and we've got a website called sourcemedicine.zone. We've got on which there's loads of videos you can watch. We've got 2 books in print about this called Homeopathy for Diseases and The Second Simillimum. And I've got some stuff on who is it? On YouTube. If you put my name in YouTube, you'll find various videos about consciousness and various other things. And so there's a ton of information to back up what I'm saying. And we've got 20 years track record of experience. We've treated hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah, we in our experience, the treatment for HIV and malaria with these resonances is still the best treatment there is in Africa. It still outperforms antiretroviral drugs or in combination with antiretroviral drugs. And yeah. Just one tiny story. When I was first doing this, when I introduced the LEAP in Africa, I went there with a whole bunch of MP3 players, to one for each disease that I expected to find, or 1 or 2. And we called the patients in, and we played the sounds to them. We couldn't give them the MP3 player to take home because the nurses said they won't come back. And but this old lady turned in. This was I started working in Africa in 2001. So by the time of 2000, well, there were no antiretroviral drugs. And by 2014, there were antiretroviral drugs, and she'd been taking them for a while. And she was obviously the last stages of AIDS, so the drugs were failing. And she came in using a white stick and an assistant. So she was completely blind. So there's not rocket science homeopathy in Africa. We just gave her the sound for HIV and put it on her ears. And within a few minutes, she cried out, "I can see." And the whole clinic took notice at that point. We didn't have to discuss the idea of sound remedies working after that. They got it. And the nurses were, by the end of the week, they were very proficient in how to use the sound remedies and saw the results. Okay, that's enough from me. I have no idea where you're coming from and where your thoughts are. So you might want to ask me some questions and I can answer the relevant bits.
Absolutely. Wonderful insights there, Peter. Thank you very much. We have quite a number of questions here. Joseph, perhaps you want to start off. You had questions on the technicality of things, frequencies, intervals, and harmonics. Would you like to ask Peter directly? Go ahead.
Sure, Peter. So just to give you a small background, I'm an osteopath in working with the body, but we started working with sound. And so we have some interest in the intervals. I mean, I'm interested in your thought process. I want to know kind of which angle are you coming at it from? Yeah, I mean, we're working a lot with the harmonic series.
Okay, so first of all, we call it sound remedies, but you know how the little white pills in homeopathy, they're all the same little white pills. They're only the carrier for an energy that we don't understand what it is. We know how to make the energy, but we don't know what it is. We put it in little white pills. Well, I just put it in little white sounds. So the sounds we use are always almost always C waves. and it's the sound of the sea crashing on the seashore. We don't use frequencies, we don't use harmonics, we don't have anything to do with sound, really. It's just a carrier. What we're putting in the sound is consciousness. That's the clever thing we do. So although we call them sound resonances, because we have to call them something, and it's easy to understand, and people then believe it's meaningful, but actually it's not. It's just they're conscious remedies transmitted by sound. And
when you say sound, you're talking about conscious thought process.
About what?
Conscious thought process.
No.
No.
There isn't a thing as conscious thought process, I think. Well, sorry.
Good.
I'm being naughty. I don't think consciousness and thoughts go together myself. So we use, I'm trying to think, you can't understand this technology because you can't understand consciousness. You know, we have a very hard, consciousness is the thing that creates this whole universe. It's the unknowable infinite. It's the here and now. It's the ultimate divine spark from which the whole universe is constantly created. So that's not something a human being can understand. It's not understandable. So we can't explain our technology in anything that's explainable because you can't discuss, you can't explain consciousness. It's not how it is. It's beyond thinking and analysis and knowing.
So that means that you've got a skill that we all don't have to transport that consciousness onto the carrier, so to speak?
Well, I did develop that skill by some method, but it's quite a skill, and it is transmittable because I don't make any anymore. Leilani Van Koten, who runs the business, she's the head maker, so to speak. She's the head cook nowadays, and it's not impossible to transmit, but it is quite a subtle process to work with consciousness. Some of that's to do with belief, and some of that is just to understand that consciousness is the dominant thing in the universe. Physicality is a consequence of consciousness. It's not, there's no such thing as solid matter. There's no such thing as time and space. These are all made up. These are man-made constructs. There is now, but even now is unknowable because we've only ever lived in now. Now is permanent, and now is timeless, and now is beyond any sort of understanding in a way. So, and consciousness is the same. There's no way of understanding it. And I'm not trying to say, by the way, that sound technologies don't work. Sound, you know, there's a guy on the internet who's got a sound, a huge gong, and he bangs it, and he says this resonates with the earth chakra, the base chakra. My God, it's so strong on the earth, the base chakra. It's amazing. But anyway, I'm not disputing sound therapy and sounds, but it's not what we do. That's all. Not at all. I see you.
So my curiosity is, what do you do? Like what? I mean, you're holding space. I understand it's beyond thought. I mean, everything you say I'm totally 100% in agreement. But now this is a language. So I mean, unless you just want to download it through the video, I'm interested in your process. You said you're working with waves, like, so is it the fluid tide waves, like in a biodynamic cranial model kind of waves, or tell me a little more of your expertise.
First of all, well, we work with sea waves. The sound of what we don't work with waves at all. We just use the sound of sea waves crashing on the seashore for our 1 minute carriers.
Gotcha.
So every treatment for let's say for diabetes is a 1 minute sound. You just listen to it 1 minute, and you might listen to it for 2 or 3 minutes, but you don't listen to it for long, and it does the job. So Just like, you know, you give a homeopathic pill, usually you give one and you wait a bit and give it again, maybe. Or you might repeat it a few times in a day and quickly, but whatever. We use the sound in exactly the same way as you might use pills, but it's nothing to do with sound. So,
okay.
And I know this takes us right back to how on earth do you do it, but that wasn't the subject of this talk.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to do that talk, I need to spend another hour. And even then, I'm not even going to start scratching the surface. So I happen to have, okay, so just so you know where I'm coming from, when I was about, I have my first USA patent on a piece of a rocket by the age of 24. So, and I did get the patent, you know, genuinely invented something, but I have no idea how I knew how to do that. I mean, I just thought about it one night, came in next morning, made an experiment, put up some apparatus, played around and figured it. But nobody else in the lab could do that. But no one ever taught me how to do that, but I did it, you know. So I noticed that I knew how to invent things long before I had any idea how I did it. And even now, I don't really know how I do it. But it is, I've got another friend who's a color expert. You know, she can walk into a room and if you ask her, can you tell me what colors this room needs to make it work properly? And within a few minutes, she'll download exactly the colors. She'll tell you the make of paint and what color on the tin, so to speak. And, you know, intuitive, creative people, there's loads of them around, but it's recognizing that talent and developing it and trusting it and whatever. For example, when I made the first remedy for HIV, you know, and I saw the results, which was stunning. You know, people walked in completely better after 2 weeks where they were dying before. I was totally amazed, and it took me 2 years to really believe the results. And I documented hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases. Carefully, I worked out a system for it. So what I do is not easily believable. And we do have a plan one day to run a training program on how you do this. At the moment, we're not got there because we're just running training programs on how you can use them. And because that's the stage we're at. One day, somebody might run a training program on, but you know, if I was running a training program, I would just as easily work with, say, management consultants or, you know, coaches, life coaches, as with homeopaths or acupuncturists or anybody, because the same principles apply. Everybody, well, the whole purpose of life is to wake up. It doesn't matter what way you do it, but everything, whether it's tennis coaching.
Thank you. I don't know where you're going to plug it in at.
Kathy.
Yeah, I just muted her, so sorry about that. Go on. Wait. Peter, you're muted. For some reason, there. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's only one story on this planet, and that's to wake up. To wake up from our animal human self, our human being, to our divine being. We are actually oscillating the whole time. If you watch my videos on YouTube, you'll see me describing it. But we oscillate between divine and human all the time. Every time you smile, you're in divine. Every time you're in human. And you can do it, you do it in fractions of a second. So Joseph has just gone into divine, you see, and Uta, you go into divine quite a lot. But we all do. The truth of it is that we all do. Even Mary's had an odd smile sometimes, and sorry, Mary. And the way divine works is important to recognize. My main thrust at the moment is to teach people to recognize their divine part and their divine conscious part and their human part, and to see how to work with these two together. Because at the moment, most of us spend all our lives believing we're human beings. That's a ridiculous idea. And we're divine beings having a temporary human experience, and the temporary human experience is very temporary. You look at me, I'm about to kick it, you know.
Oh, take your time. There's no rush, I don't think.
No,
We
no
still
rush,
need you to teach us how to do this.
Yeah, anyway, so other questions. Joseph, I've tried to answer impossible questions from you. Someone else got any impossible questions?
Yeah, well, we had some more. Let me just check. Yeah, okay, where are they available? I think that's on sourcemedicine.zone.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mary was asking, how can we access the ability to send these sound remedies?
Will you just send them by email?
Would that be a recording, or is that would that then be
now, if you go on the if you go on the website, you sign in as a practitioner, and that's only a legal requirement to get around the fact that we couldn't offer these things to the public. So we've got a barrier, a technical barrier there, which is rubbish, and but it's just to satisfy the laws of the world. Sign in, and then you will be able to go and make a resonance to send to someone. So if you want to give diabetes to your aunt in China, so to speak, you just put them, and we've invented a way of personalizing that, which is different from homeopathic personalizing, but it's personalizing, and you put in the stuff that makes it personal. And oh, someone new has come on. Okay. And you then get the link, and you can send the link to the person in China or wherever, and they just listen to it. We don't actually send out sounds, we send out links to the sound, because we keep the website. I know this is weird technology, but this is weird technology. So we keep the website connected to source permanently. So when the person clicks in to their link to the sound, they're going straight to source. So we're not actually delivering it, we're getting it straight from source, live, fresh, on the moment. And then, and that's it really. But it means that you can treat someone in China just as quickly as you can treat someone in next door. You can just send the email to them and it's done.
Okay. And there's no distortions by way of transmission in that form.
Yeah, there is a lot of distortion. If you understand how the internet works, it does dreadful things to data. But we worked that out a long time ago and sorted it out. So
okay, that's what I hope to hear.
Yeah, we figured that one. We talked to some really good, in the homeopathic world, there's some pretty technical people. So we figured out how the internet works and how to compensate for it. But otherwise, it chops it all up into tiny pieces and reassembles it and does all sorts of other dreadful things. We double guessed that and figured out a way around it.
Okay, we have a question here that has, do you have a sound remedy for ADHD?
Yeah, of course we do. It's common. We have 600. We have about, I think, 600 sound remedies.
Oh, that's a big number. That's good.
Yeah,
so do you have one for COVID?
Of course.
Oh, perfect.
If you want my sound, I won't tell you. No.
Come on.
My comment on COVID is it didn't need to happen.
Absolutely, I agree.
But on the other hand, it's done the world. It's been a powerful learning experience for the world, and it's done something to waken the world up. It's taken the world forward in some form of consciousness in a very slavish, crude process, but that's what the world wanted. But as far as I can see, nobody in England, at least, went around and said to the holistic profession, have you got any solutions to COVID? Homeopaths would have said, yeah, we've done that before. And now COVID was a bit of a challenge, but nonetheless, there were solutions. But we had a solution to COVID from the day after it launched, so to speak, because we keep those on. We have a commitment. We've always had solutions to all those things ever since we started doing them. So, but the world's not ready for this sort of technology, and there's no way you're going to get to be listened to and believed and all that. So we don't expect for for it to happen, because it would be such a mind shift. It would be like the end of science as we know it, and that science, you know, science at the moment completely ignores divinity. Therefore, it's incompetent to the point of 50% of anything it thinks is going to be wrong or be missing. So, and then the other half of science gets it wrong anyway, quite often. So it's a bit of, but they couldn't make it would be such a mind-changing gap that, you know, it's too much to expect from the world at the moment.
Yeah, that's true. We have a comment from Kathy. She says she wished she hadn't missed most of this. Kathy, I can forward the recording to you later. She says, hello, Peter. So glad to be here, and you are still working so diligently with this. Thank you so very much.
Is this Kathy here?
Yes, that's Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
Who came in late.
Yeah.
Hello, Peter.
Yeah.
So do you have
Okay,
any
yeah.
questions, Kathy? Any comments? Anything else?
I wish I hadn't gotten the time messed up. I was an hour
right.
behind myself, so.
Yeah, know the feeling.
So does anybody else have a question? Mary,
I'd say
Joseph,
that
Shirley? Yeah.
there is tons of backup information. There's lots of video information on YouTube and on our website and on the. If you want to believe the results from Africa, see the results from Africa, then there's tons of information in Africa. Africa's so nice because it's like when Hahnemann first learnt homeopathy, he did it in a culture which is rather similar to Africa today. People were standard, healthy, uncorrupted, and straightforward. And you couldn't invent homeopathy in Berlin today. It's just too complicated. You just never see the wood for the trees. Whereas, so in Africa, the results are stunningly obvious, and you get to understand. The difficulty is when you try and translate those results to the West, it's not so straightforward, because the West is the Western world is a sort of dying culture as far as I can see, and it's a thorough mess. And I mean, there won't be any white people in 200 years, according to the stats. But then, according to the stats, there won't be anybody in 50 years, because there won't be any fertility left in 50 years. So God knows what's happening around here.
Yeah. Richard's asking how to navigate your website to find the appropriate remedies.
Yeah, with great difficulty. Our website was designed by a 14-year-old and 6 or 7 or 8, 10 years ago, and we're trying to update it. We're in the process of upgrading it, and it's taking a lot of effort and time and skills. And one day it will be brilliant, but right now it's rubbish. But you can navigate it if you try hard.
Okay, keep trying, Richard.
It does work. It does work. People use it every day, and
okay.
You it just takes a bit of practice.
Tanya says, I would like to convey greetings from the Bulgarian homeopaths.
Okay, thank you.
And Richard then says, can we just email you to get the appropriate remedies?
No, I don't work. I've got a single script, which is to do nothing every day. and if someone asks me to do something, I then might do it. But other than that, I don't work, and I can't be paid to do anything. So you can forget that concept. I'm cogitating on the levels of consciousness and how we can help the human race. You know, the only way out of the present dilemma of the human race is a shift of consciousness. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the only game in town. So I'm focusing on consciousness and how we can help people shift consciousness. And I'm making progress, and as are lots of other people in all sorts of fields of human endeavor. In fact, all human endeavor is really directed towards raising consciousness, whether they recognize it or not. You know, even Donald Trump was raising consciousness.
Yeah, true. So that Kathy says that's something we can learn from, and Richard says he wished he was able to do that. And Joseph is asking, where do you see the future of homeopathy going? Good question.
I don't know with homeopathy. I still think homeopathy is a brilliant system. It's brilliant. It's a bit too intellectual, and I would burn the repertory personally. I think because it's much too intellectual and hopeless. And a lot of the database of the repertory was built in the 19th century on very few cases, and it's really not a reliable tool. And it is a brilliant tool, and it's not reliable. And so, but I think the mapping system obviously is the mapping system is mapping systems are much more comprehensive and understandable. But the great advantage of the old systems of homeopathy was you had lovely things like no thirstlessness, let's say, for pulsatilla. You know, if you haven't got any hard keynotes for a remedy, it's very easy to prescribe it without reliability. So I don't know, but I don't see that homeopathy is a new system, and it's only 300 years old. It's going to take 1,000 years to get to its maturity, at least, if not 5,000. And it's the same with, you know, what I'm doing. We don't expect this to be any way prominent in my lifetime. It might be, but it might gather steam as the years and as the decades, as the centuries go by, or it might take off because it's so easily available. You know, the great thing about the sounds is that you can deliver them to India for the same, well, at zero cost, just as much as you can deliver them in the West. It's a zero cost system, which is brilliant, really. It means you still need some supervision and some management and some whatever, but it's but the other side of that is the pharmaceuticals, which is trillion dollar businesses, will try and hang in there and make it as complicated as possible for as long as possible. So I don't know the answer. I don't see that homeopathy is going to win through and wipe out conventional medicine. The conventional medicines are one huge business, but we may see the collapse of all businesses. I don't know.
So what can we do on a personal level to raise consciousness in that and every other respect?
Well, every time you give a homeopathic remedy, you're raising consciousness. The more conscious, the more accurate the prescription, if you like, the better the consciousness, the shift, the more obvious the shift in consciousness. That's how it works. If homeopathy didn't cause shifts in consciousness by removing the obstacles to the flow of it, it wouldn't work. You know, what we call vital force in homeopathy is divine being consciousness, you know, source consciousness. It's the same thing. So you need, you know, but as I say, every system of human endeavor, especially every system like management coaching or sports coaching or any, we did quite a lot of work with sports, and we showed that we could increase sports performance by something like 1% in Olympic level sports. And, you know, if you want to prove homeopathy works, that's a good place to use it, because top level sports people have very accurate figures about their performance, especially individuals. And so you can see the difference. You give a remedy, you can see the difference. It's objective, it's black and white evidence. And it's the same thing for diabetes, you know, like diabetes is a great place to do this sort of thing because it's black and white. You don't have to give a mechanism of action or all that crap. You just got straightforward answers. How are we doing?
Okay, there's a question by Joseph. He says, are there other homeopaths that you respect, feel are on the same cutting edge with you?
Well, no, I haven't noticed. I mean, I can respect a lot of homeopaths, but generally speaking, homeopaths prefer to be homeopaths, and they don't like giving pills, sounds to their patients. We do supply pills just as much as we supply sounds, but so they give pills. But I didn't understand a word of that.
Tanya, I don't know what you were saying. You might like to try in English. Oh, now she's muted herself again. Okay, no, sorry. Go on then.
So no, there's no homeopaths of substance who've come on board with, no, there's no really leading homeopaths who've come on board with the work I've done, because most homeopaths are really happy evolving the mapping system and those sorts of systems. So, and they're, you know, most homeopaths, I joke a bit, but some homeopaths are Bible bashers. If it ain't in the organon, it ain't true. But more importantly, even if it is in the organon, they ain't going to allow variations on what their interpretation of the organon is. So, so I think personally, if I had a conversation with Samuel Hahnemann, he'd be quite happy with what I'm doing. But I don't know that we've got, I don't think we've got, and we don't try to really influence the homeopaths in our direction, because we don't see the homeopaths as, we see them as pretty good people, but they're premature, they have what we call premature cognitive commitment. They're committed to homeopathy. So to ask them to deal with a different system is asking too much. So, and you know, for most people, a leap from conventional something to homeopathy is a huge leap, and homeopathy is a brilliant system. So to ask them to leap to something new completely, that's a bit too much. So we're just as I'm just as interested in, you know, coaches or acupuncturists or herbalists or doctors as I am with homeopaths.
So how do you see sound remedies in the term of sound remedies? I'm thinking of the Fibonacci series by Dr. Rosenzweig, for example. What do you see in?
I don't see, once you start working with consciousness, it's pretty hard to think of anything else as relevant as, you know, the brilliant thing, I can't convey to you this, but once you start working with consciousness, you've got such a new, powerful way of working. Everything else.
Sorry.
That's right. It's Tanya's flicking in and out, I think. But anyway, everything else pales in it's like the transition from working with material science, materiality, to consciousness is huge. And the power of working with consciousness is absolutely enormous. And it applies to every field of human endeavor, whether it's a singing teacher or a school kid, or as I showed you earlier, or anything. It's got much more power to its elbow than anything else. So I don't think physical Fibonacci series, anything like that, is in any way, it's not in the same game plan at all.
Yeah, okay. So do we have any more questions from the audience here? Anybody want to ask anything? Tanya, if you've got a question, would you like to type it into the chat field so that we can ask Peter? Well, a very interesting, yes, Tanya?
I would like to ask about the common remedies for the subconscious that is nowadays for the epidemic conscience of the people. Is there one common remedy that we can share with more people?
Could you repeat that question, somebody? Uta, could you just?
I think she's asking about the a remedy that touches the subconscious of people in our current times.
Yes.
Okay. So I would say, from my perspective, I think many people are disconnected from their conscious self. The main point is to connect them better to their divine being rather than their human being. And so we've got a remedy, we've got a resonance. It's called something like enhancing connection to divine self, or to, it's in this if you look through the website, I haven't got it in the top of my tongue, but it's to do with enhancing connection to true essence, enhancing connection to true essence. That is a starting point for a lot of people. And I don't care if they've been doing yoga or spiritual practices or meditation for 20 years or 30 years. In fact, if they've been doing anything for 30 years, that's where I would go. Because it doesn't work, you know, if you're doing anything for 30 years, you know, that you're on the wrong agenda. You know, if someone comes along to me when they give me a whole long story about, you know, this and that and the other, then I ignore that story because that's obviously not the place to go. That's not where the energy is. That's where it's stuck. And I'm being joking slightly, but anyway, I would go for the connection to their divine, to their divinity, the connection to their consciousness, you know, those sort of things. That would be my starting point if you wanted to really, but you have to be a bit careful because these things work. Do not underestimate these resonances. They may appear to be sounds. That doesn't make them less potent than a 10 potency of the correct remedy. They're not, you know, you need to test the waters a bit. You know, you need to know if this person is thoroughly congested. You know, if they don't eat, if they only eat at McDonald's and they don't walk more than 2 miles a year, so to speak, you know, you need to be a bit careful with these toxic time bombs. So someone's put up the ADHD remedies, SR2378.
Yes, and he's asking, what's the meaning of the code?
Well, the code is a legal requirement. You can't have a remedy for a disease. It's illegal. So we give it a code. You take the code to the pharmacy decodes it into the remedy and they send it to you.
Okay.
It's just ridiculous.
Interesting.
Things that go on. And and it's important actually that when the remedy arrives, you write on it what it is, ADHD. It will still work, but it's a good idea to write it on because you're correct. Well, we're just going through legal barriers.
Okay.
It took us, you know, we had all the time we were inventing these things. We're up against legalities which are,
of course,
stupid, really, and
terrible. Yeah.
Normal things.
Yeah. Kathy's asking, what are your views on prophylaxis in terms of the use of your remedies?
Well, I listen to coronavirus once every 3 months, just to keep myself well and free of corona. And sure, if you've got an epidemic disease going on, then or something, then you would listen to the remedy for the epidemic disease. If you're living in Africa, my suggestion would be that you listen to malaria fairly often. Just to make sure, you know, just to keep yourself free of it.
Okay. Kathy is sharing that she shared a sound to utilize several years ago when the Ebola issue was raising in Western Africa. This was on a military base and she wasn't there herself, but was told it proved very effective. So that's just a comment. Tanya, you wanted to say something?
Just that, now going back to there was just an example of what happened with Ebola. A team of homeopaths went in to treat Ebola according with normal homeopathic remedies. They got to Sierra Leone, I think, and then they were put with great resistance from They got there with great resistance from the medical profession. They learned how to dress up and put all the white suits on and all that thing. But when they finally got to it, they weren't allowed to get near a single Ebola case. Because if they treated an Ebola case with homeopathy and it got better when there was no treatment, then this would have been seismic in the medical world, and that couldn't be allowed. The whole mental mindset of the Western medicine would have gone down the sinkhole. And you know, that wasn't a possibility.
Absolutely.
And yeah, Control F. You need, when you're looking at our audios, Control F. You put in Control F, and then you've got a search box. And with the search box, you can find anything. Without that, you're lost.
Okay, that's good to know. So everybody make a note of that. If you want to search the website, Control F is the keys you have to press.
Yeah, it's the standard for all sorts of things,
yeah,
but
of
we
course.
use it. And it probably says it on the website somewhere, but if you don't read the
Mhm.
right bit of information first, you get a bit confused.
Okay, works well, says Richard.
Yeah.
Tanya, you wanted to say something?
So I want to say thank you to Peter for the information that he shared with us.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting for me to listen to the about the sound remedies
Mhm.
and to connection with the divine and the we are one at
Divine level, yes.
yes, in the divine level. Yes, thank you, Peter.
Okay, thank you. We're not quite one, by the way, but I've got a video on that.
Okay, we'll go watch the video then.
If you go to YouTube, Consciousness 1, Peter Chappell, you'll find it.
Mhm.
But
Consciousness
I
one,
don't make a
okay.
big deal about it. I don't make a big deal about it but it's important underneath to know that there is a subtle difference between the source, the ultimate source, and your own divine being. It's not the same thing.
Perfect. Okay, and then we've gone beyond the time. I'd like to bring this to a close. We've had you here for a wonderful hour. Peter, I'm very grateful that you came to join us for this webinar. It was very, very interesting. I think I learned a lot. I will certainly keep an eye out for your remedies, and I'm going to take a look at the war trauma one. Definitely, this might come in very handy for me in my practice. It was very interesting. Thank you so very much. We have comments. Everybody's thanking you in the comments. Thank you, everyone else who was here. It was lovely to have you all here, and well, join us at HWC. We've got a special offer currently. If you want to join us as a member of the Homeopathy World community until the end of May, you will be grandfathered in at our reduced fee of just $20 a year, because on June 1st, we are increasing our fees. But if you sign up before the end of, or before the beginning of June, you will stay at that rate until, well, lifelong. So, and we hope your life is long. So it's a very special offer we're making for people that sign up in May.
And can I just say
thank you very much? Yes, of course, certainly.
And it was an honor for me too to be here.
Thank you very much. It was an honor that you were here for us today. It was very, very interesting. I learned a lot. Thank you very much. We hope to talk again sometime, Peter, if you're up for it.
Yeah. I don't do anything.
Perfect. Perfect. It was very, very interesting. Thanks very much. See you all at our upcoming events. You can check out the HWC calendar on the website and you can see what's coming up. A quick word about our health in show that we have next month. It's Dr. Isaac Golden coming to visit. He's going to talk to us about homeoprophylaxis, about COVID and things like that. So it's going to be very interesting there too. That's coming up in June. And well, check out the calendar. We've got loads of things in store for you. Homeopathyworldcommunity.com. That's the page to visit. Thank you very much, Peter. Have a lovely day. Everybody else, wherever you are, or a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, nighttime. I don't know. Take care. Have a lovely day. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.